For as long as I've played video games, I've always been drawn to games that give you a clear objective, but with no explicit pathway to get there. Games that grab you by the shoulders, point to the summit of a mountain, and then leave you to it. For example, Terraria starts you with a few meager tools and sets you off into a completely open world with no stated progression path, aside from an unhelpful guide character. Yet by the game's conclusion, you'll be able to tear early game bosses apart without a second thought, and at no point did the game say, hey, do this next. But there was always a way forwards towards the summit of that game, even if you don't know what it looks like. Hollow Knight is a Metroidvania dripping with the joy of exploration that fully realizes this pathless mentality. With every ability obtained, dozens of new opportune routes become available to you, but even at that, some blockades can be overcome with precision and skill rather than obtaining the proper upgrades. I'm by no means the best or even a good Hollow Knight player, but here I'm able to skip a wall jumping, dashing obstacle by bouncing off of the spikes with precise melee swings before I have the abilities unlocked. This allows me to get to the brooding Malek boss sooner than perhaps intended. Was this spike bypass an intentionally developed design? I'm not sure, but there is certainly a large portion of players that will see this spot in their first playthrough and say, okay, not going that way. Yet equipped with all my knowledge, I was able to begin the game, reach, and defeat this boss in under 12 minutes. In order to do this, you need to traverse the majority of the game's first area, defeat a boss, complete a sub-area to obtain an ability, and then travel to and defeat the Malek. Things like this are outright impossible to achieve the first time you play the game. Not due to lack of skill, determination, or any admirable traits. Some things just have to be learned through their performance and repetition. Whether this is how any dev intends their games to be experienced, in multiple runs for optimization of self, or as one singular experience that players have elected to repeatedly play for one reason or another, is entirely case by case. But regardless of developers' intentions, and regardless of possible solutions, these are the things that light the fire in myself and so many others to push the limits, cut corners, and to see how far we can push these games and ourselves. But what truly makes these games irresistible for me, that fans that fire into inferno, is the tools that are handed to you to make the ends meet and the skills that can be built to leverage knowledge and tools into achieving these goals. All of these factors weave together and support the unlimited improvement potential that being pathless grants to players seeking to push the limits of these games, even after reaching the summit many times before. This pathless mentality manifests itself in a dizzying amount of ways depending on the game being discussed. Be it a challenge playthrough of a single-player game, speedruns, micro-game technical skills, game mechanic knowledge, game manipulation techniques, or any combination of these and so many more. And of the few games that can represent these skills in a tangible manner, even fewer can represent a dozen at once. Of course, if you're familiar with who I am and what I do, you know what game I'm guiding this discussion towards. That game, of course, is Deep Rock Galactic, which I feel is the best example of unguided player improvement, creating an incredible experience from the first climb to the 1000th. For any of you who aren't familiar with the game, it goes like this. You and a team of up to 4 players goes down into a cave, fight alien creatures, and complete an objective that varies depending on the mission type. Once the objective is completed, you press a button and your escape ship will drop into the cave some distance away, get there, get in, mission complete. Of course, I'm heavily oversimplifying this process, namely the fact that there are a number of secondary objectives, rare events, and boss encounters to find. Also, every single cave is procedurally generated out of pre-made tiles. Outside of missions, there's a number of weapon upgrades and unlockable equipment, and a full suite of cosmetic customization for every character. But moving past the basics, when it comes to the endgame of Deep Rock Galactic, many players have elected to move towards a faster playstyle. A playstyle that involves traversing caves quickly and vying to complete each mission in the fastest time possible. So why is it so many Deep Rock Galactic players have felt the mute siren song of playing fast? Well, because the game tells us to. But what exactly is it that suggests that we play DRG fast? The answer lies in the gameplay mechanics themselves. Just to be clear, when the game suggests that you shift weight, it's a thinly veiled demand that will preserve your life. Nearly all gameplay mechanics scream words of urgency, from point extraction spawn rates ballooning exponentially to crushing levels in just a few minutes, or teams being ground to dust due to slow progression through a morkite mining mission. Every mission has its own desperate struggles against time and resource limiting factors that make you intimately aware of how fleeting your life in any one cave is. The crushing weight of your own imminent demise that can be invoked purely by inaction is an undeniable motivator. To compound that, many actors in a mission can take you from happy and healthy to dead and buried in seconds. Spending more time at a place where you're vulnerable is ill-advised by the most generous definition. At every moment in a mission, you're bleeding. Every round expended, flare placed, wall drilled is bringing you closer to absolute zero. Staving off failure is leveraged by one single item. I'd say just as much as the words danger, darkness, dwarves encapsulate the theme of the game, you can describe the gameplay by saying that time costs nitra. Nitra is the beating heart of a mission and the single facet that all other gameplay systems hinge off of. A failure to keep yourself well supplied will cripple even the most cocksure players in a matter of minutes. To compound on the pressure of needing nitra to survive, the resource is also finite. The amount of nitra in a cave, the lifeblood that allows you to metaphorically hold your hands to the fire on Hoxus, will run out. Not if, no hypotheticals. Your minutes are numbered, and they're directly tied to how quickly you can gather that precious material before you find yourself backed into a corner with empty guns and no way out. Nitra holds more power over the delicate equilibrium of a mission than any player's skill, more so than anyone's game knowledge, and more than anyone's will to fight. It's a fundamental linchpin in all moving parts of a mission. Neglect it, and you'll be punished. However, if you neglect objectives in favor of nitra alone, you will run out of ammo by the time you realize your error. Having tunnel vision is as ill-advised as being flighty and unfocused. So what does nitra buy you? Some powerful weapon to deal a decisive blow against any enemy you come across? A free ticket to success? A promise of safe passage? Hardly. The sole thing that is tangibly granted by nitra is time. Fleeting moments bought by a humble red mineral. A futile fight against an endless, unyielding pressure. What you do with that time is of grave importance. Whether or not the player is consciously aware of it, all missions in Deep Rock Galactic have an innate time limit. This timer is invisible, unquantifiable, and never directly communicated in any way to the player, but it's always counting down. I'd like to draw a parallel to the Doomsday Clock for visual reference. At every moment of a mission, your actions, be they positive or negative, are timed. Some actions bring you closer to escape or claw the needle back seconds at a time, but as soon as you cease productive survival measures, time marches towards midnight once more. Absolutely any action that does not directly contribute to your survival or mission success is wasted time. Things that may seem unfathomably mundane, expending ammunition, walking instead of sprinting, or hesitating to press a button. Moments like these are slow, insidious killers that drag you towards midnight without hesitation. More severe incidents can cause the needle to lurch forward, bringing you minutes closer in a moment due to a single mistake. At no point will mercy be shown to a faltering team. Weakness is not rewarded with a second chance. When cracks appear, pressure is not alleviated, it's multiplied. As soon as you're caught on the back foot, time will sweep you away. Snags in progression may seem solved quickly after they occur, but lasting effects cannot be seen until it's too late. Once the dominoes begin to fall and the needle ticks to the final seconds, many people can see their impending doom. The mark of mastery is catching the first domino before it tips and staying ahead of the clock minutes in advance. But even if it is too late to stop the apocalypse, there's a distinct pass-fail quality to any mission that can be overcome even as dominoes fall and the clock hands rush towards midnight. Fundamentally, the only requirement to win any mission is for one player to be inside the pod before the timer reaches its end. This is the summit we spoke of before, the capstone of any mission, the culmination of the struggle and every factor that led you to the end of that mission. For some, individual missions aren't significant. They're stepping stones to reach a more lofty goal, like obtaining a specific overclock, acquiring a cosmetic, reaching a certain level. However, I think this is where many get lost along the way. Get lost staring at the horizon rather than being cognizant of every footfall along the journey. Being present in moments where opportunities arise to cut one's teeth should not be taken for granted, as they may never be seen again. Everything is random, and the quantity of unique situations and challenges you'll be met with is imperceptibly vast, with unimaginable depth, affected by even the smallest contributing factors. All of this, the infinite sea of possibilities presented by every step of the journey, is impossible to describe in a way that does it any justice, and only by jumping feet first and continuing to drive yourself forward will anyone be able to chart this vast ocean of potential. So how does all this relate to playing fast? More than any rewards or bragging rights, progressing swiftly allows us to put ourselves in more of these situations, chart more surface area, and polish skills more rapidly than would otherwise be possible. The fact that missions have such an intrinsic pass-fail criteria feeds an incredible fervor in those interested in embarking on this journey. The bar for success is low. Nearly nothing is asked of an individual to be rewarded with success. So what drives us to leap so far past the mark when lowering the difficulty would achieve the same birth of success? Especially when the requirements for a pass are reduced to nearly nothing on a low difficulty. but yet we still drive ourselves to extreme pressure situations in only the most oppressive environments. Why do we do this? Aside from the obvious efficiency and rewards, the greatest satisfaction in this medium is to tangibly improve one's capabilities. To coalesce all the experiences you've had, to see what you've been through behind you and what stands in front of you. Suffering a brutal defeat where you swung with all your might but fell helplessly against the opposition. But to return rearmed, wiser, determined, and unfazed by the sting of failure. Coming back to meet the same challenge again, and to break it as a direct result of everything you've worked for. Overcoming the adversity that once got the better of you, and proving to yourself that it never will again. But that's not the end. No, it can't be. To meet the same challenge again, and again, and again, breaking that wall again, but this time with the knowledge of how you did it before, smoothing out the small failures that were hidden in your prior success, slowly refining your capabilities and dismantling the same challenge over and over again, each time better than the last, each time more ruthless, more calculated, each victory separating yourself further from your past shortfalls. You're no longer concerned with what's being asked of you, what's required for a win. No, now you compare yourself to your own successes. You compete against your own ability, constantly attuning yourself to a higher expectation based on what you know you're capable of. For my last 2,000 hours of gameplay, I've lived in paralytic fear that someday I'd find myself failing to improve further. Yet, it's never happened. There's always been another route to the peak, another trick to tuck into my belt, one more thing to do better. The climb still feels special to me. The unexpected twists and turns, a new challenge to overcome, or simply a chance to improve myself in ways that have always been right in front of me. You'd think that after all this time, the victories would ring hollow in a way, but they never have, and I don't think they ever will. There truly is some form of beauty in every moment with games like Deep Rock Galactic. The way that your experience shapes your view of the same moments over months or even years of experience. The memories of your hardest battles, of your most gut-wrenching defeats, of every single moment leading you up to where you stand right now, to the summit. And when you stand on that summit for the 100th, 1000th, or even 7,000th time, hopefully you take a moment to reflect on this, on the value of your improvement and the intoxicating fact that you still have much further to go. And what then, you may ask? Well, you start the climb again.